It's more than just poverty, it's dignity, it's hope in the heart of our community. We're building our blocks into destiny. We're breaking those chains, yeah, we're setting dreams free. It's more than just poverty, can't box me in. Yeah. From the ground to the crown, yet he rise again. We're building our blocks into destiny. We're breaking those chains, yeah, we're setting dreams free.
What's good? It's your man, Drayton Jackson, the host of It's More Than Just Poverty, right here, the podcast that brings you everything that you need to know and understand about poverty from all angles. That's why it's called More Than Just Poverty, because poverty is not just what you think it is. It's so many different segments to it. And as I constantly say, I want to make sure you have the people sitting in front of you that are doing the work. Not just doing the work behind the scenes, but doing the work out front in the streets, boots on the ground. And once again, I am bringing you a guest that I admire, that I look up to, that I work with, that I will say this. There's people that talk about being in the community, then there's people that's doing in the community. And those are two different things. So today I have Pastor Carey Anderson from Fame. When we say fame, what, like, because I always hear fame, but what does it really mean? What is fame?
Hey, Drayton, it's good to be with you. It's just good to rock and roll with you today.
Indeed.
But FAME is an acronym. First AME Church,
Okay.
First African Methodist Episcopal Church.
All right, there we go. All right, because fame. Look, I'm dating myself. There used to be a show called Fame, and I loved it. Watched it all the time. Debbie Allen, shout out Debbie Allen.
Oh yeah.
But Fame AMC Church, Seattle. You know, let's start with here. Poverty in the church has been together, right, since the beginning. We could talk about Jesus and what he did for the poor. We could talk about disciple. All of it goes to there. The church has been the vocal point of saving people in poverty, feeding, either programs, whatever it may be. Explain today, when we talk about your history, you have a rich history. Your history goes back a lot. And when we talk about the different avenues that you have been in, the different dynamics that you have played, and now being a pastor in Seattle, how do those things help you to understand poverty in a different way?
Well, thanks for the question. Again, it's just good to roll with you today.
Yes, sir.
My first church, I stayed in my first church 16 years in Nevada. And what we noticed there, we moved that church from where it was to a 4-acre site. And what we found when we moved, that we had room to expand. And what we did, we saw that homelessness was an issue.
Right.
We saw that food insecurity was an issue. So what do? You start programs to meet the need.
Right.
And so this is how we started.
Go back, because you said something. You started the church. Was it yours? You started and grew it for 16 or brought in?
Well, I served that church for 16 years.
Got you.
That church, Bethel AME, was the oldest black church in the state of Nevada, 1907.
So the work that you did with homelessness, work that you did in poverty, Nevada, just shout out to a lot of the organizations in Nevada. I got a chance to go there during COVID. The first time when people are not there, you see I think homelessness hides in Nevada because of the casinos and stuff. What was some of the things that you brought, because you was in Kansas as well,
I was
correct?
in Kansas, yeah.
These spots, was it the same thing that you saw in Nevada that you saw in Kansas? And then when you got to Seattle, did you see the same thing? Like, oh, this thing follows everywhere that you go. And then out of that, as the pastor now, you start to say, all right, we're doing programs, but is the needle moving?
The needle is always moving.
Right.
The needle is always moving, Drayton. What we found is that Nevada is a unique place. And then when you move from Nevada to Kansas, which is the Midwest,
Right.
you find that that is a unique place in that people live there their whole lives. They've never moved anywhere. Nevada, people are moving in all the time because of the casinos.
The dream of being there,
getting rich,
working,
and then when you come to Seattle, you find it's an influx of people coming in, but you also see the needle moving even more because we make up 7% of the population here in this city and this county and the state even.
Right.
But we make up over 15% of the homelessness population.
Yeah.
You know, and so we see that there is definitely a need, and I'm fortunate to serve the oldest black church in the state.
Exactly.
And so we started back in 1969 housing programs.
Okay.
And so I'm standing on the shoulders of those pastors and lay leaders that started Fame Housing Association back in 1969.
Let's talk about that a little bit because, you know, everybody talks about housing is like, oh, well, you know, we have it, you know, it's people should deserve it. But then you see developers not really backing it. So what makes a church really get in? I know there's a need for it, but what are some of the things? Because now you're a developer, right? You put in religion development.
You find yourself in that role.
Yeah. So how did that play with you guys getting into that? And how is it now? Did you build the housing? Did it come about? And what did you learn from that process?
Well, the history shows that when Boeing wanted to build housing for their employees, they built through the Model Cities program. I'm sure you've heard of that, about that.
Yeah.
But then Boeing understood they're not in the housing business.
Good.
They're in the building plane business. And so it went up for bid who can take over these housing projects that have been developed.
Yeah.
And so First AME, along with other groups, tried to apply. We applied and we were granted. The Bryant Manor was our first, and then we got two others. And we've since developed Bryant Manor. We tore it down and built a new 103 unit, and we got another 100+ unit behind Bryant Manor 2.
Got you.
And then, of course, with the Fame Equity Alliance, we started another corporation and built the Elizabeth Thomas Homes, which is another 119. So together we have over 300 units of housing just under the umbrella of First AME Church.
And see, and that's the part when we talk about, is the church still serious about poverty, right? Do y'all want to solve poverty? Do you want to get into it? Here it is. That's the example of it, right? The example of, hey, we knew that there was a need. And I love the part that you brought up about Boeing, because I want to touch on that real quick, because Boeing knew that their workers needed a place to stay.
Yes.
But when we look at developers today and we look at people today, nonprofits don't get that same love. Like you get like, hey, we need to build this because we see our clients coming in every day and we need to build housing. Give me two things that you learned in that process.
Well, you get the not in my backyard syndrome sometime. But First AME, because the housing had started so long ago, we owned all three of those. So we didn't need any extra financial backing or fiscal management. We could do it ourselves, for ourselves, and by ourselves. And so that's one of the glories. Now, what's going on now, especially with Communities of Concern Commission, you have a lot of people that are partners with us and a part of our consortium.
Right.
But, you know, because they don't have the history, they need a fiscal management arm on that. And so hopefully through your leadership and board support, we can get to the point where we're building enough bandwidth that we can do these things for ourselves.
And don't have to ask anybody for it. Let's talk about politics just a little bit, because today's climate is so real. What I don't see is a lot of pastors saying a lot. Now, like I said, this is not a political show. Y'all all know this is not a political show. This is not a racial show. But there is a dynamic that is happening that I see under administrations 2 ago, and even last administration when Biden was in office. There was a flux of pastors that came out and really put their name into politics. They put religion into politics. What is your stance on that? And what do you think today's preacher needs to be?
Well, the black church, if it's going to be true to its original form, is always going to have one foot in the political realm and always have a foot in the social justice realm.
Well, there you go.
And so that's how the AME Church started. We started the first protest walkout of St. George's Methodist Church, not because of doctrinal differences, but because of social differences. Discrimination, racial discrimination. They talked one talk, but didn't walk the walk they talked about. And so that's what formed Richard Allen and Absalom Jones and their group to walk out in one Exodus. And that was before the March on Washington in 1963.
Right.
And so this is what the genesis of the Black church is about. It's always speaking truth to power, and it's always meeting the need where there is a need.
So you bring up something so important, because even though Dr. Martin Luther, I say this everywhere I go, I'm on record for saying it, I say Dr. Martin Luther King, pastor too, right, was one of the most influential politicians that was not a politician, right? When we talk about social justice today and we talk about religion, our younger generation is fighting. To me, when I look at the younger generation, I see pure civil rights.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because I look at Dr. Martin Luther King and that whole group, they were unapologetic when they showed up. I see our youth like that. But I see the disconnect also in religion with that. What is missing between the church and the youth today in regards to politics, one, but what is the church not getting with our youth and giving that space to say, we want to fight. We don't want to just sit down. We want to fight, but we're emotional about this fight.
You know, that's an interesting question, because when you look at SNCC and you look at all of the movements that were going on in the 50s and 60s, what you're talking about are young people.
Yeah. Kwame Ture.
Stokely Carmichael, Martin Luther King.
Yup.
They were in their 20s.
Yup.
They were in their 20s. H. Rap Brown, they're in their 20s. Eldridge Cleaver, Bobby Seale, Huey P. Newton, they were in their 20s. And they had the motivation to do it. The Black Lives Matter, in their 20s. And so we have to connect the youth with our spirituality, and knew that it was Martin Luther King and them that saw that this was a social justice issue, but it was rooted in Scripture. When Moses went to Pharaoh,
come on,
let my people go, you know, and that's a social movement.
Right.
And Martin Luther King used that motif as the narrative for the civil rights movement, going from Egypt to the promised land. And so right now we have to make that connect with our young brothers and sisters that have the fight, they have the stamina, but they might not have all the knowledge. And that's where we come in, because we've been there, we've seen it, and we have the knowledge, might not have the tread on the tires anymore like we used to have.
That's true.
But we got to learn to work together to get the common good out of the movement. And so you see, although Jasmine Crockett is not going to be able to run again because she lost the primary, but her pastor is running in her spot.
In a spot,
you know, so here's Freddie Haynes. And so we're still moving in that direction. And this is where we have that connection between the social, political movement and the religious movement, because what God has joined together, let not man nor woman separate.
Go ahead.
They go hand in hand, in other words.
I had a chance to attend the church, and let me just say this. They are Seahawk. Look, I wore my Dallas jersey.
Oh, we had to call security on you.
I couldn't come in. The sister kept me at the door. She said, you have to wait now. So, but what I saw there is exactly what you're talking about. I came just so happily on, I guess, the youth day, because the youth was preaching and giving their sermons, and then you had 3 other youth that spoke. That connection, what do you think about today's pastors that is like just social media suave, that the conversation now is going more on social media, more pastors are on social media.
Yeah.
What is that connection now that we're bringing religion? Because I always used to hear this from my father, you know, the revolution will never be televised, Drayton, but then I'm seeing the revolution being televised every day, right? But what do you say about social media and today's platform, that pastors are there, the word is spreading more, people have that option now? How do you feel about it?
It's a valuable tool, and we need to use it to promote not our own selves, but the needs of the people we're supposed to be serving. And I think that's what really makes the difference between using your social media as a platform to make things better,
right,
not to make things bigger for you, for the individual. Because if it's just for the individual, that's small-minded. We have to be about the masses, how to reach the masses, people of every birth. For an answer, Jesus gave the key. And if I be lifted up from the earth, I'll draw all men and women unto me. So this is what we need to do in the religious forefront, in our social media platforms, in the way we preach our message.
Right.
It is to reach the masses. And the masses are hurting with food insecurity. The masses are hurting with housing insecurity. The masses are hurting because of lack of employment, job opportunities. So we need to let them know how to access, how to get in through these doors, who to call, who to see, what platform to go to, what website to visit, who to call in times of your problem, in times of your need. Domestic violence is something that the church has to address.
Yeah.
We have to look at the drugs and alcohol. We have to look at mass incarceration. All of these things, you say, how does religion play in it? It does play in it because it deepens our relationship and our connectedness to Jesus the Christ.
I tell you when the right people have to come. That's why I told you poverty is not just something that's in a bottle. There's so many dynamics to it that's there. I want to touch on something that you dealt with communities concerned. Let's go back to that because you talked about the freedom of it, and then you just talked about access.
Yeah,
you've been with communities concerned since the beginning. You've known it. You watched it grow. What was the valuable point of community concern? But not only that, the valuable point of the people that helped bring it together. Talk about what was needed and what did y'all solve in bringing that together?
Well, Catholic Community Services saw a need in really advancing the cause of people of color, Black and brown people. And so that's how, is my understanding, how the Communities of Concern Commission started.
Right.
And then because of the juice that Catholic Community Services had in terms of knowing the legislators who make the laws, who pass the laws, who write the laws, that was a major, major plus for the Communities of Concern.
That was a
Commission.
valuable asset of like, hey, we got
absolutely.
those connections. Let's use our. So do you look at it, because you just said something I want to frame a little. They invested in, hey, we see what you have. We see the need that you guys need there. We have these connections. Let us put you together. How valuable was that in today's time that is still needed, but also how valuable is that connection around other philanthropists and other organizations to say, we have something that you don't have, let us put that together for you?
Right, and it's building partnerships.
There you go.
It's building partnerships. And then the message to the legislator is, look, we got this type of bandwidth. We have this network going on. If you want to stay in office, you need to listen to us. You need to hear us. You need to see what needs that we're addressing right now. Because if you don't, our network is large enough to vote you out.
Yes. There you go.
And so there's power in the numbers. There's power and strength in building community and partnerships.
I want to address two things that I know the church is dealing with. One is immigration. Today's time is real. Immigration has really been the forefront of everything. The church has been the safety net and the solitude of most immigrants in this country since its beginning. We can go back to the Catholic Church being that, and then moving on to the Black Church with slavery, with everybody. It's always been that institution or that building that, hey, you can't come in here. How do you feel about today's situation in immigration?
Well, you know, first of all, First AME was a hub for the Seattle-based Black Panther movement back in the 60s. And the pastor at that time opened our doors and let the Aaron Dixon and that whole group.
Even though the theology was a little bit different too, right? Because the Black Panthers.
Well, it was radical.
Yeah.
It was radical.
And a lot of churches was like,
but the church is radical. The church is radical. We have to understand when we're talking about feeding the poor, that's radical. When we're talking about helping the homeless, that's radical. Jesus didn't spend time in the church. He spent time
on the road with
out
the people.
Out in the people. Yep. And that's why they called him a wine bibber, because he hung around winos. You know, I mean, he was where the people were. And so the church must continue to be like that. First AME is fortunate. We partner with a church in Tukwila that houses immigrants. And so we provide assistance through food and clothing, diapers, and even socks and things of that nature. So the church has to get engaged and involved and intentional about helping those who are coming in. You know, the world is more colorful than it is Anglo. And so our community is no different. And so when we think about those who are coming in, this is not a melting pot. It's like they say it's a melting pot with the circles and the squares and the triangles, but you come in as a square and they're trying to fit you into a circle. You know, you have to understand the uniqueness of people, but then also say this is a person of God. This is a person, this is a child of God. These are families of God. And so as that, we love one another as Christ has loved us. And so that's what makes the difference.
We deal with a lot of people on our show that are struggling. They're in it. They're on services. They one check away. Their car broke down. They're on the bus. They're going through struggle. As a pastor, what do you tell that audience that's listening to this about having faith and still waking up the next day knowing that you can go on? What can you tell them?
Know this, that God still loves you. Know this, that there are people that care. There are churches that care. Know this, that if you don't have the resources, there are churches that you can come to that have the resources, know how to refer you, know how to get you into programs, know how to get you into treatment, know how to get you into subsidized housing, know how to get you in a place that you're safe, that you're protected, and that it's a place of refuge for you. And so we're out there and we want to help you. That's the basic bottom line. You're not alone. And many of those in our churches have been just where you are. And if God can do it for us, God can do it for you too. There's room. There's room.
I thank you so much. We definitely going to come back and revisit it again because I think so many changes, dynamics are happening right now in our world, and I would definitely love to hear from you again on it. So once again, I thank all of you. Make sure you like, subscribe, make sure you share, because this information that we have, this knowledge that we have is for you. It's just not for us. I don't care about being famous. I care about giving you the knowledge and making sure that you're there. So this is about elevating the conversation of poverty to the next level. To the next time, it's your man Drayton Jackson, the host of It's More Than Just Poverty podcast. Peace.
More than just poverty can't box me in. From the ground to the crown, yeah, we rise again.